So, on to combat now. I should make a small note here before going any further. I'd originally planned to make combat and choice the same video, but on closer inspection of the games, choice has proven to be easily the most important topic in the whole Witcher series, and therefore necessitates more time for its examination, while combat has been shown to not really need that much time at all. In combination with all this, another small topic has become more and more important in my mind as I replay these games. I've come to see this area as nearly being just as important to the series as the other areas I've gone through. So then, to do all these topics justice, I've decided to make this topic and combat have a combined video, and choice have its own later. So, without further ado, combat. I think collectively you spend just as much time approaching, being in, or leaving combat in these games as you do everything else combined. So it's only natural you'd hope that this would be the standout part of the series. In reality, however, the quality of the series' combat is rarely above average and can sink to considerable depths. These depths occur fairly frequently in The Witcher 1. Now, while the first game's crafting and leveling systems are fairly complex and satisfying, the combat itself is highly unsatisfying and usually quite boring since you're extremely passive for the whole thing. The outcome of any fight has probably already been decided by what's in your inventory or how you built your character prior to the fight, not any skill you show in the fighting itself. You're only ever interacting with the combat system by engaging with the rhythm game element, or taking a potion to heal or add damage, or choosing your next target, and without these minor interactive elements, the game would basically play itself. Now, while a lack of emphasis on player skill in combat is suitable for some kinds of RPGs, this sort of style of combat just doesn't fit with the kind of game The Witcher 1 is trying to be. If The Witcher 1 is trying to make us believe that we're playing as some sort of superhuman killing machine, then it's doing a poor job of it by relegating the player to the position of a potion supervisor or sword rhythm director. There's also just a general lack of polish that hurts the aesthetic enjoyment and ease of the combat, and considering you're mostly a spectator to most of the combat, this is fairly significant. It's not unusual for enemies to glitch their animations and just stand there motionless while still dealing damage to you, which looks bad and can be really frustrating for the player. Enemy behaviour and tactics is also hugely uninteresting. You basically aggro them, and then they attack you at the same rate with the same animations until either you or they die. Enemy design itself can also be quite bland, with sometimes the only difference between, say, a cockatrice and a guardsman being the damage they deal and how much space their model takes up. Rarely do enemies have a unique aspect to them, such as an extra attack or a special effect they do to the player. It just makes the combat dull to not have exciting enemies to fight. The game's difficulty in terms of combat is actually done fairly well throughout the game, excluding the endgame, where it just sort of gives up. The game is good at setting up significant challenges throughout the game, such as the hordes of drowners in the second chapter's swamps, and these provide a good incentive for the player to want to improve and master all the systems relating to the game's combat. At its best, the combat itself is only ever tolerable. It's definitely not an entertaining experience in and of itself, and for most people approaching the game, it's more of a hurdle to get over rather than another thing to appreciate about the game. I'd have to say it is the biggest complaint I see about people who couldn't get into the game, and they do have a point. While The Witcher 1's combat can at times be enjoyable, it is ultimately a somewhat boring and uninvolved experience that has to be tolerated to reach the better parts of the game. The Witcher 2's combat is, as I said earlier, a much more action-oriented experience than the previous games, possibly as a response to the general complaints levelled at the last game's highly passive way of fighting. CD Projekt Red directly addressed many complaints about The Witcher 1's combat, and player skill is now a critical element of winning any fight. Unfortunately though, they didn't solve the first game's lack of polish when it came to combat, as The Witcher 2's fighting system is just generally messy too. The Batman Arkham influence on how combat itself plays is most clearly seen when you actually attack an enemy, as this makes Geralt do a random sword animation for whichever attack you've chosen. This random element essentially means you do not know what exactly Geralt is going to do when you attack, and this can be really annoying at times as there is a significant difference between some of the animations. Some of them are half-second stabs, while others are slashes that are twice as long. Sometimes, doing a light attack makes Geralt cover half the room and deal multiple attacks as he spins, but in all my hours of playing, I've never found a way to reliably make this happen when I attacked. Considering you're usually going to be fighting against multiple opponents, this lack of precision is hugely frustrating and will often result in your unfair death. Collisions and hit detections are a bit off too, so you can expect to get hit mid-roll by someone who just kicked the area where you were when you started the roll, or get stun-locked thanks to an unlucky series of animations by you and the enemy. Despite all this, there is actually a fair amount of good in The Witcher 2's combat. The way you control Geralt himself is actually radically improved in the second game, with things like bomb use being far better done here than they were in The Witcher 1. The Witcher 2 also adds much greater enemy variety, both in terms of the monsters you face as well as their actual behaviours and attack strategies. The Kikimors of the first game are nothing compared to the Endregas of the second, for instance, with the Endregas having highly detailed and varied models, unique attacks that no other monsters have, etc. The Witcher 2 also mostly got difficulty right. Boss fights, for instance, excluding the awful Kayran fight, are great fun, challenging and highly varied. After the prologue, the difficulty goes on an excellent upward curve, with nice little spikes in it for boss fights, such as the first fight with Letho, or the Gargoyle contract in Loch Ween. The first few hours are the exception to this, however, as the Lavalet Fortress sections are as idiotic gameplay-wise as they are context-wise. This is just a terribly designed section for so many reasons, but I'll try to be brief. You have to fight multiple enemies alone at a low level when you haven't even unlocked the basic functionality upgrades you can unlock later, and your only way of evading damage without using Quen is by rolling, which, guess what, is a little hard to do in such cramped arenas. You never have to fight in such cramped spaces against so many enemies with so few abilities as you do in this section anywhere else in the game, and for good reason, because it fucking sucked. Ultimately, for The Witcher 2's combat, we can see that there is potential here for a fun action combat system, and it gets realised every now and then, but is consistently unpolished and flawed. The Witcher 3's combat is essentially The Witcher 2's combat refined. Any complaints I had about collisions, hit detections, or a general lack of polish for The Witcher 2's combat simply does not apply to The Witcher 3. The critical addition within all this polish is the inclusion of the short dodge. This now means that you can evade enemy attacks and be quick about attacking them back without having to launch yourself halfway across the room with the roll. It's vital for dealing with human and humanoid enemies, and really should have been in The Witcher 2. Combat would feel really incomplete without it, which I guess shows you what the problem with The Witcher 2's combat was. The roll is still in as well, and can now be used as it should, against the larger enemies of the game, for which your dodge won't move you out of the way fast enough. Random animations when attacking has also been fixed, with there being less variation between the animations at play. And as well as this, the evasion, dodge and roll are consistently responsive and exact, so no complaints here. Enemy variety is up to the standard of The Witcher 2, with the addition now of flying and swimming enemies too. So, I bet I'm making The Witcher 3 sound great on paper, right? Well, it is in practice as well, when the leveling isn't working against you. Fighting enemies at a similar level to you can be good fun, but you really have to keep yourself on a leash when approaching certain locations or quests, as being too high or too low a level in these areas will just sap all potential enjoyment or challenge out of the combat, for reasons I've already discussed. In conclusion then, we can see that the series started off on the worst foot when it came to combat, with The Witcher 1 featuring uninteresting combat that just didn't at all mesh with the game's overall style and direction. But the series did then correct itself and attempted to make the combat more reliant on player skill in order to do justice to the idea of playing as a Witcher. The Witcher 2 is then the transitional stage in getting to this more action-oriented style of combat, and features good combat fundamentals but has poor execution. The Witcher 3 then does finally achieve the great combat model the series always wanted, but is unfortunately hampered by all of its leveling nonsense. So that's all I have to say about combat for the Witcher series. But as I said earlier, there is another topic almost as important to look at before I go on to talk about choice. This topic will be well known and possibly loved by long-term followers of the series, and I would argue is a fundamental part of what makes this series exceptional. Its minigames. So, to start off, let's look at the one minigame that has persisted throughout the series, fist fighting. In all games you have the opportunity to enter bare-knuckle brawls for cash, and each game gives you a quest line to follow to become the champion in whatever area of the world you're in. They basically play like a normal combat encounter, but you're unarmed and only ever fight against one opponent. Fist fighting throughout the series is itself actually a great analogy for how the series' combat has developed. The Witcher 1's fist fighting is clunky and somewhat dull. The Witcher 2's goes too far in making the fist fighting more exciting by making it pure quick-time events, and The Witcher 3 finally provides a reasonably enjoyable and difficult experience, when you're the right level of course. The presentation of fist fighting in The Witcher 3 though is the weakest in the series, with the questline and locations you fight in actually being fairly unexciting. The Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 actually take some care in presenting the fist fights well. The questlines aren't far superior to The Witcher 3, but the locations in which the fights actually take place are much nicer. These locations are usually the interiors of inns, which have nice music playing, people bustling around in the background, while you and another man beat each other up for money. It's all very atmospheric. Speaking of inns, the drinking contest minigame is unique to the first Witcher and is sorely missed in the rest of the series. It's fairly simple gameplay wise. You choose what you and your opponent will drink and try not to exceed your stamina while exceeding theirs. Your stamina is then further determined by how you've built your character. You get to do these with some pretty interesting characters, like Dandelion or the Spy Master of Temeria. Now, even though there's only about half a dozen instances of this minigame in the whole game, it's well placed throughout and adds to the experience as it can gain you some valuable items or even alternate ways through missions. But really, it's the instances where the drinking mechanics pop up in the narrative that are really exceptional. In one of the most memorable scenes from the first Witcher, you take a break from your busy life as a brooding anti-hero and monster slayer to just have a drink with some friends. You candidly discuss all aspects of life, from politics to women, all while the player uses the mechanics they've learned from the drinking contest minigame to advance the conversation by serving alcohol. It's light-hearted, humorous, and an iconic moment of the first Witcher. Dice poker is another important minigame. It's not too complicated either, as it's essentially just the rules of poker but played with dice. It appears in The Witcher 1 and 2, and it's a pretty nice way to immerse yourself in the world, like the fistfights in both games. Just like the fistfights, you do this minigame in an inn, and all the ambience and atmosphere of that place soaks through the minigame while you play it. Both games present dice poker itself slightly differently. The Witcher 1's poker is all about mathematically playing the odds as best you can, since you never actually roll the dice yourself. You just click a button and that does it for you. While The Witcher 2's dice poker allows for a bit of skill in the manipulation of the physics of the dice throw. In both games, the minigame is graphically presented on an inn table with a highly detailed and illustrated playing board and jaunty music that starts up whenever you begin to play. It's all great. The accompanying quest line in The Witcher 1 is also quite well done, concluding in you playing for thousands against the king himself, while The Witcher 2 just sort of ends the quest line abruptly. On reflection really, The Witcher 2 doesn't really have a minigame questline to match the dice poker questline in The Witcher 2, but The Witcher 3's flagship minigame certainly does. I'm talking of course about Gwent. Taking its gameplay influences mainly from Magic the Gathering, the integration of Gwent into the world of The Witcher 3 is highly reminiscent of dice poker in The Witcher 1, but easily surpasses it in scope. There's probably enough about Gwent to fill an entire video, but I'll try to be brief here. First off, whenever you actually go to play Gwent, you're sent to a viewpoint that is a complete abstraction from the rest of the game, that isn't reconcilable with any of the areas you play Gwent in. This is in contrast to something like dice poker, where special aesthetic attention was paid to make sure that the minigame slotted in nicely with the rest of the world. The difference between dice poker and Gwent really is that dice poker allowed you to immerse yourself in the world of the previous two games, whereas when you play Gwent, you pretty much stop playing The Witcher 3 and play a whole different game. To seriously engage with even playing Gwent, you have to reasonably suspend your disbelief, as for instance the blacksmith opposite you plays a Ciri or even Geralt card against you. Gwent has never frustrated me more than when I was just barely beaten by some peasant who had the cheek to play me against me. So from all this you'd think there'd be a high chance Gwent is pretty terrible, right? But it's not, mostly. It plays great and the mechanics themselves are interesting, with the artwork used for the cards being great to look at. And it's a nice distraction from the rest of the game's activities. And it's real fun to engage in the trading card mentality of gotta collect them all, which complements the game's open world design perfectly. As much as I gave out about The Witcher 3 following awful open world design trends before, with Gwent it really shows the competition exactly how these things should be done. Instead of chasing down hundreds of useless little items like you would in an Assassin's Creed game, Gwent cards are fun to hunt down, give a tangible gameplay benefit once acquired, and help you access unique narrative paths. This last part is because of how wonderfully Gwent is integrated into the game's side quests, with high stakes Gwent tournaments or quests where you chase down hero cards. It's all really excellent. That is, until you get near the end of the game. Once you have a fully fleshed out deck and you're pretty much happy with every card in it, you're going to stop having fun. The AI simply can't make interesting matches when you have a decent deck. It's really only ever fun to try and beat when it has a card advantage over you. This would then be a great time for the devs to introduce some kind of online PvP Gwent, but unfortunately CD Projekt Red never put this in the games, and are also actively shutting down fan attempts to do so. So there you have it, that's Gwent, the greatest Witcher minigame that fell at the last hurdle. But just because The Witcher 3 has Gwent doesn't make it the game with the best minigames. In fact, the amount of time and effort put into making Gwent seems to have made the other minigames suffer.
We've already talked about the less than stellar fist fighting, but the last minigame in The Witcher 3, horse racing, is particularly poorly done. Now, in fairness, horse racing itself is fairly well integrated into the world, with there being special quests like the Vegelbud Derby to do in relation to it. It's just too bad that the gameplay design of the actual minigame is lazy and uninteresting. There's no skill involved, and the AI is rubber banded, meaning they never get too far ahead or too far behind you, except for the exceptional races. And the prizes are just terrible too. The horse races are not fun, and they're ultimately not worth your time. The other real stinker in the series is The Witcher 2's arm wrestling. The implementation of arm wrestling into The Witcher 2 is about as boring and uninspired as you could possibly do it, and its integration into the rest of the world is similarly poor. I doubt there's many people who actually remember arm wrestling in The Witcher 2, and I don't think there'd be anyone who remembers it fondly. So, in conclusion, we can see The Witcher 2, quite characteristically of that game, dropped the ball when it came to this aspect of the series, but The Witcher 1 and Witcher 3 put forward a strong presentation of minigames. And from a design perspective, I think that these minigames are a crucial part of the Witcher series, keeping you mildly distracted while you make your way through these huge sprawling RPGs. With the exceptional minigames such as Gwent or Drinking Contest further enriching their respective games' narrative.